Right, for final round, we're just going to pick up where we left. So I hope that the coffee, water, or otherwise inspired you to think about what we were discussing on. My panelists all had something on the edge of their lips to say. So, Davy, I'm going to start with you, Jamila, Lenka, Natalie, and then, right? And then we see where we are. Davy.
Yeah, I want to react quickly on the migration word. And actually, I think it's indeed migration is very sensitive in Flanders and Belgium. So we heard a lot of negative stories about migration the last years and so on. And for the employers, migration is migration. It's very difficult to really have difference between active, passive migration. So it's our role as a Chamber of Commerce, which is a private organization, to really explain them what is active migration, what are the opportunities, and what is the added value of it. So I think that's our key role, to really go into interaction with them, to really tell them the story of active migration. And these kind of projects are really needed for that kind of conversations with the employers, because the employers are also a part of the society, of course.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. My question was on the general public, but of course employers are part of the general public. So in that sense, that's where the discussion should be. And that's where eventually the needs will be felt. So we can discuss on projects or ambitions, but obviously once you want somebody to care for your mother and there is nobody to care for your mother, and thus you can no longer take your job because you will be caring for your mother, it becomes clear that maybe there is a need for somebody else to assist you in taking care of your mother. So it is also something that will probably come closer as time progresses. Jamila.
I also wanted to pick in on the question that Stefan asked about migration. So the notion, it's a very negative notion, but I'm a daughter of a migrant worker. My dad is medium skilled. He's a truck driver, and he's one of the professions that is listed up. And he never. And I'm born in Leuven, so a lot of links today. So when my dad arrived, he was 16 years old, and he was a youngster, and he also got questions from. Where are you? Where do you come from? And he said, I'm from Morocco. And he said, what are you doing here? So he said, I'm a worker. I come here to work and to build my family here. So he didn't receive negative questions, but he received a lot of questions. But too bad I didn't invite my dad today. So he always tells me, if you see people worrying, you have to go to them and talk with them. Because I think a lot of people in Flanders, in Belgium, in other member states are a bit hesitant about migration, but if we make the debate possible between employers, migrants, also the local authorities, I think we can explain and argument why economic migration is very positive. It's good for our economy. So we have a study of the National Bank, I think, a few years ago. It's good for the diversity in companies. We learn from each other. It's good for building up innovative entrepreneurs. So it's good for a lot of things, but we just have to talk with each other. And I hope that the discussion will be opened after this national conference. But we're doing it already, so good work.
Thank you. Lenka.
Yeah, I just want to answer your question about the soft skills, because of course soft skills are something very difficult. I'm also from migration. I'm a Flemish one, and I arrived in Flanders when I was 16. I never lived in Flanders before. My mother lived in France, my grandma in Canada, so I didn't know anything. When we arrived in Belgium, every evening we were gathering together to speak about these strange Flemish people with their strange habits. So it was forbidden to touch each other. You had to say sorry, not pardon. Pardon was French. Oh, no, no, it was sorry. And so we were having a lot of wrong ideas about these strange Flemish people. So the soft skills is very difficult to teach. Within the match project, we had a pre-selection committee, and we were working, our counselors were working together with the counselors in Nigeria and Senegal to ask the right questions, the questions that are important to us. That doesn't mean that they are really important in general, but that are important for our employers. For example, why do you want to work for this company and not for another one? Most of the youngsters said, I don't care. If I have a job, if I have a good living, it's okay. But that's not the answer for us. So we were teaching them. This is also soft skills, yes? And then IOM made a kind of training on soft skills, but I had discussions with the experts at VDIB regarding soft skills. I discussed a lot together, and then there was this training. But once the people are here, that's the reality. They learned and they heard a lot about in theory, but then they are coming here, and then it's really important to have somebody on the working floor, not only to coach the newcomer that is working, but also to explain to the colleagues and to the team leader what is going on. And so we have a program with nurses, and there they have a mentor who is helping them in the social life outside the job. And on the job place, they have a coach. But that's not a coach of this person, of this nurse. That's a coach of the group where they are working in. And this is also really important, because you can learn a lot in theory. When you arrive here, it's really a strange world. I know that, and you probably also, yeah.
Just a quick comment, because when we come
Sorry, just wait until you have the mic. Yeah.
when we come here, we have to have this integration course. And I just was discussing now that I really suggested this to the mayor where I live, that also citizens need integration course, because really we are new people for them, just came from outside. We have our culture, they have their culture. So we need to find this, area where we meet with each other. So for those cities or places where it's not so common to find people from outside Belgium, especially in Flanders, I think it would be good to start thinking how we can tell them how it's so important to have migrants here for the economy, for diversity, how we can exchange knowledge and experience with each other.
Thank you. So that's a task for somebody to organize the integration course for nationals. Natalie, I'm not sure if that would be on your plate.
Probably. It is one of the things that we struggle with still is a lot of internationals coming to Leuven want obviously to integrate not only in the expat community, if I can use that word. I don't like it, but I'll use it anyway. But they also want to integrate with the locals, between brackets. And that is indeed still a little bit difficult. And I think that's mainly due not because one or the other doesn't want to, but because you don't have a common platform to do so. What I always recommend to the internationals that pass by my office is to, first of all, go out there. It's not something that is going to come to you, but you have to actively pursue it. And the way that you do that is the way that an ordinary Belgian would also do that. Join a sports club, get a hobby, speak to the parents at the children's school, talk to your neighbors, little things like that. But it does require a specific mindset of not locking yourself up and watching Netflix every evening. And that is something that an employer also has to be clear about to their potential employees. When they are recruiting, when people are coming from abroad, you can't make an ox out of a donkey and vice versa. If somebody is not meant to be an international, they are not meant to be an international. It's not something that you force upon somebody. It's also a personal mindset, both of the person coming to Belgium, of the receiving country, and of the organization that he or she works for.
Yeah, so you're actually also saying that it's goes back to Davy's slogan of being international is not just the person coming in, but it's the organization that has to have.
Exactly.
And the
it's not
system.
necessarily a geographical thing. It's also a mindset.
Yeah. I think we have a comment on that.
Thank you. Yeah, just to illustrate actually with another example from our work in the Migration Partnership Facility and the different projects that we're funding that are all doing this, right? They're moving people but what we have heard from them as a lesson is really that they need to invest and really plan from the beginning measures to support the companies to host the migrants once they are recruited and once they have arrived. For many of these organizations are small organizations that have, for them, sometimes it's the first time they hire somebody from abroad, and they really don't know. I mean, it's really a two-way street. It's the migrants themselves need support, but the companies as well. And often they use it as a tool, actually, this first hires to internationalize their business. And so it's not just a matter of being a nice employer, but it's also a matter of being prepared to work in an international environment, to work in the EU, or even expand to other markets. So there's a business case for them to invest in their internationalization and them hosting properly their migrants. So I think it's just something that projects really have to, that's what I hear from our partners implementing on the ground, that you need to think that from the beginning and actually invest resources in supporting businesses to do that.
And I would like to add to that that's not just for newly hired, but that is just as relevant for people who are already here, whether they have a refugee status, temporary protected, or second or third generation migration background, doesn't really matter. It is opening up for each other to see the benefits of working together. So I would like to expand your call, and indeed a lot of research shows that if employers don't make that step, it's not happening. However much we push from whatever perspective, if an employer doesn't open up, if their workers say, I'm a worker, I'm not a coach of intercultural communication, whatever, then it's very difficult to actually make this happen. I have a lot of hands all of a sudden, and I still have Rafaela. The gentleman.
Thank you for the discussion. I have a real quick question to Natalie, who said you don't like the expat community term, and I would like to ask why, because then I see that you use the term internationals a lot, which a lot of people would not make a difference between them. So I'm kind of like want to see what's in your head, the differences, and why you don't like one or why you prefer the other. Thank you.
It's a personal thing. First and foremost, expat, in my mind, refers to a fiscal status, to an advantageous package that dates back from the 80s. When I hear the term expat, and some people agree with me and some don't, that's fine. It has a different connotation than the word international. An expat is like something that is a little bit apart from, I don't know, and international is a little bit broader. It has nothing to do with a special fiscal status or with a temporary status. Expatriation often, to my mind, refers to a temporary assignment, a posting assignment or a secondment assignment in a different country. While, again, I speak for the Leuven context, a lot of the people in our region might come initially for the first 6 months and then end up never leaving. That's something that I hear every day. I was supposed to be here for 6 months. That was 15 years ago. So, and that, I think, is the difference between an expat and an international.
But it's also a political discussion. So if I just answer the question from the Dutch perspective, we used to talk about labor migrants, but labor migrants is now really an insult, so we talk about internationals. And because we don't want to make the difference between expats and internationals, everybody has become an international. Go ahead.
Maybe just to touch on this point that was raised on inclusion courses for nationals. I think it's an interesting point because in fact it's something that we've integrated into the match project in terms of considering diversity and inclusion trainings for the employers. There's, just to share an anecdote, this past week a colleague of mine told me about a counseling session that she held with a migrant in our office where the migrant was looking to the floor the whole time, which in a European context could be seen as a sign of evasion or lying. And when the colleague spoke to the interpreter said, no, in fact, that's a sign of respect back home, and this is an indication of the level of respect they have for you. And I think that's a key consideration in terms of, so potentially not necessarily an integration course for nationals, but really an understanding of the fact that, okay, when you are recruiting international talent, that also comes with a level of consideration of they bring a certain skill set, but they also come with their own culture and their own kind of traditions and behaviors. Now that goes back to the soft skills. There are some things that will match and that make the transition very fluid. Some things won't match, but they're not harmful. They're things that if recognized and if trained on, then the person recognizes that, okay, this is a sign of respect, or yes, this is a different way of communicating the same point, and then that allows some time for transition while the person gets acclimated to the Belgian context, for example. So I think there's kind of different elements. There's the exigencies of the employers in terms of soft and objective skills that are expected from the person being recruited, but there are also, to some extent, obligations for the state and for the employer to recognize that in benefiting from international talents, there are also adaptations necessary.
Yeah. Thanks. Well put. Right. And that was your point. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if there are questions or comments. I still see two hands, and I haven't forgotten you, Rafaela. Gentleman in the middle.
Thank you. My name is Flo Didden. I work for 1111, 1111 Belgian NGO coalition. My question is on an issue that was raised in the panel before, that labor migrants in Flanders and those that come via the single permit, they are not guided into an integration course, so there is no obligation to follow any integration course which is different from asylum seekers or people coming through family reunification, which is a bit bizarre, I think, because there is still this idea that these people are coming for a very temporary period to Belgium and then they will leave again, as was in the 60s when we organized labor migration, and we still talk about how these policies failed in the past, and still we do not apply an integration course for these persons now. So I think that's a bit bizarre, and also I think it would be very useful when it comes to the whole issue of labor rights, because we know there are issues there also in the Flemish system of single permit, especially if you look at shorter skilled migrants like truckers and others, that there is a problem with wage theft, with people working too many hours, with housing, etc. And all these issues could, of course, be raised in this kind of an integration course, that they would know where to go when they have problems with their employer, that they know that there are trade unions, that they can be in contact with. All these kind of elements we think should be integrated in this kind of a course. And so we had some discussions on this. But yeah, it's an open question, I think, to especially maybe to Jamila, but to the whole panel. I think what's your take on the usefulness of this kind of a course?
Yeah. Very good point, I think. Jamila, you want to respond?
Yeah, so we had a discussion with Floor and the other social partners about this aspect. It's very interesting for the Flemish government, for Department of Work and Social Economy to have this, but we're not competent for this. So I think we can talk about it maybe in the coming months to have this organized, but I think we also have to look for the wishes of the employer. What does the employer want? But we also have to respect the rights of the migrant, because I already said the Flemish economic migration policy is very, so it's demand driven, but we also have respect for the migrant. We want to offer him decent work, competitive salary, and he also has to know his rights. So I think it's a very interesting thing that we can take also in the Skills Mobility Partnership to investigate. But I think, like you mentioned, there's also a problem with the housing. So I think there's a lot of governments. So we have to sit together on one table and discuss this also with the employment agencies and the social partners to have this debate running. Yeah.
Maybe if I may add, there is a relatively recent European directive which obliges employers to inform their workers on their rights, which would then mean that Davy, for instance, could organize, if you have a group of employers who each have one or two workers who don't have time and money to organize something for the individual, but as an organization, you could organize something which would be a voluntary sort of integration, soft landing kind of course also on labor rights. That might be a way to combine the different obligations and benefits of having people be aware of their rights as workers. Would that be? I'm just giving it to you. You don't have to respond now.
Well, I think if they do not do it and inform the employee, etc., I think the employee won't stay neither. So I think if it's an obligation or not, the employer really wants that the employee is integrating in the society for their own best interest. If it has to be then an obligation, I think it's more a political decision or discussion. I think for the employer, it does not really matter, except for the time offered, of course, that the migrant has to deal with it during working time. That will be a very hard discussion then. Yeah.
I see, Lenka, that you wanted to, but I also had a gentleman in the back. Is it okay if we take his question and then?
Yeah, it was a reaction on the last remark, because for newcomers it can be mandatory to follow these courses. But if you are coming here to work, then you may follow the courses, and very often employers are advising the new employees coming from abroad, the internationals, to follow these courses. And then the courses are organized in the weekend and one evening, so that it doesn't impact that much. So there is a possibility. It's not compulsory, but they can do it.
Okay, clear. Yeah. Gentleman in the back.
So I'm Gregory Luaba from Keep Dreaming. I don't want to ruin the atmosphere in the room. Since yesterday, it was all nice, it's all cute. I talked with Rob about this a couple of times already, with Daphne as well. So I hate it when people rumble during those events. I will try to go straight to the point and not rumble for 5 minutes. But I'm trying to collect my thought here. What I wanted to say is one thing. I believe that in this kind of conference, there is a need for more complexity in the conversation. And when I'm joining this kind of event, there are two things that I want to do. One is look at the diversity in the room, in the crowd, and then two, look at the diversity in the panel. And from that standpoint, I want to say that I believe the next point for this kind of conversations is to bring more diversity also of experiences and voices. And that's where I'm aligning with the lady before who said that she wanted to have more migrant voices in this kind of forum. And from that, I also want to say that when you are working in your bubble as policymakers, as development specialists, etc., it's nice to have a testimony, but that's not what I care about. I want to see more diversity inside of your teams, in Brussels, in Belgium, because Brussels is diverse, Belgium is diverse. And there are expertise that are lacking in the conversation that we've been having, whether you work for the European Commission, Parliament, or Enabel, or whatever. So you have, I think, a responsibility also as an institution to represent the diversity in Brussels and Belgium through the work that you do and the voices and the conversations that you've been having, because you are making decisions or orientations and investments. So that's one. When I came here, I had a question that I was wondering, and I wanted to ask to Rob, but it already answered it this morning, and I want to share that with you, is how attractive is corporate Brussels and corporate Belgium in this global marketplace? I repeat, how attractive is corporate Belgium in this global marketplace? And I think Rob already answered this morning. And if you're not aware of this, I invite you to talk to him and reflect on this. Because you're all talking about attracting those talents and those highly educated workers, which is part of the work that I'm doing, and they have choices. Why should they come to you? Why should they come to Belgium? And I will finish with this, and that for me is the elephant in the room, based on the work that I do. And the gentleman before talked about this a little bit, and it's the first time in 2 days that I hear this. It's about racism. Let's be honest. In Belgium, we have one of the worst, if not the worst scores in Europe with the market or the work inclusion of people with a non-EU origin in Europe. We have different reports about being black in Europe, about Brussels being so white, etc., etc. So based on that, and I'm hearing, for instance, that those projects goes about Senegal, about Tunisia, about Nigeria, which are countries with a lot of people with a Muslim religion. Talking about that, what is the relationship in Belgium, in our corporate culture, about people with a foreign origin and being Muslim? So all those elements play a role. And the last point I wanted to say, we talk a lot, I heard a lot about the workers. They need to do this, they need to do that. And what about the employers? What should the employers learn, do better in terms of matching, because we talk here about matching, and making sure that the culture is inclusive and their practices are equitable for everyone? Thank you.
Thank you, because I think you raise a couple of very important points. And like I said at the beginning, I'm from the Netherlands. I have grandparents with refugee backgrounds. You don't see it, but it's there. And that might be the case as you also expressed your feeling about being new in an area. So migration is not something that you can necessarily see from somebody if you have that background. Yet when you do see it, you are absolutely right. The people where it shows because of skin color, face discrimination. And this is in the Dutch context, in the Belgium context. And it is one of the reasons why a lot of people, I mean, we've said it again and again, there's a lot of shortages on the labor market. Yet, if I look at youth unemployment numbers in the Netherlands, for kids third generation with a Moroccan background, it's devastating. So we're not teaching our own people properly to take the jobs that need to be taken. And we're talking about recruiting internationally for jobs that, I mean, even IT jobs. I know I wouldn't be able to do it, but we've had a shortage of IT people since 1990. You know, the millennium bug and Indians, shiploads, and they helped us, whatever. At that moment, we could have said every IT education in the EU is for free because this is going to be the top priority of our workforce. We didn't. We don't prepare ourselves on the long run for a lot of reasons for being prepared for the shortages that we face. I'm training a lot of lawyers, and a lot of these boys and girls, they're okay lawyers, but they're not brilliant. And I'm like, oh, I wish you would become a nurse. We need nurses, not lawyers. But the system is not prepared to take that step and force us to not have fun during the lunch, but during the lunch do a training how to install our solar panel on our roof, because there's nobody in this country or in the Netherlands or elsewhere who's going to do it for us in the next coming year or so. So if you want to have a transition energy-wise, it is not just something that we can outsource and solve externally, but it's something that we have to solve. And it means that we have to accept that maybe somebody of color is going to actually install a solar panel on your roof. What's the problem? But indeed, you are right. There are companies, there are people who have a problem with that. And that is, well, maybe it's too difficult to solve, and in part the positivity about these projects and the efforts that are being put into, they're different projects, they're different problems, they're different, yet you absolutely make, I think, the right point to connect them, to say we can't have a happy meeting, and I don't think you actually, although everybody's really quiet, I don't think you spoiled the atmosphere, but you did. I was talking with, it is the elephant in the room. You are absolutely right. And it is so very difficult to talk about this in an open way. I see that Davy actually also wants to respond, so that's good. I'm going to do a final round of my panel, but Rafaela hasn't been able to respond at all. So I start with you. You don't have to respond, but each of you throw it out what it is. And I think then we sort of close it. And we have drinks and networking, and we talk about these points. And we talk about how tomorrow morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock, what time do you start? 9:30, you are going to make that one call that you've always thought, maybe I should call them and see how we can address this and this. Okay, if you don't work on Friday, Monday morning. Monday is Pinksteren, right? Tuesday morning. You make that call, or you send that email to reach out to whoever it is to work towards his inclusion, to address the racism in your organization, in your town, in your whatever, so that that is also something that we network on, that we create partnerships on. Back to you, Rafaela, go ahead.
So many things to say, but in 1 minute wrapping up, I wanted to go back to the public debate point, because in a way Gregory brought it up, Flor brought it up. It's really important, and what we've heard today and yesterday are so many other ways to talk about economic migration. So we are now on international, we can be on skills or talents. It is obvious that we are trying to clean the word as much as possible so that we can talk about it without being kept in this toxic debate that have been going on at least for the last 15 years in politics and in the public debate. And this is also why it has been so important to start framing what we are doing, looking at international talents and the needs at different end, and ethical and fair, etc. But indeed, there is a need to talk much more, including, as Bjorn was saying this morning, in partner countries, because the same ghosts and elephants in the room exist here, exist there. It's not specific to Europe to being racist or to having difficulties in talking about economic migration, etc. But this is also why, among the different coordination and cooperation and partnership spaces that we are building, and if you are here, it's because we are building it together, also with you, also with the employers, also with the public, there is a national attempt in Belgium through this national strategy on migration and development to put the public narratives on migration, including on labor migration, including on talent, at the core of the efforts that we do with the employers, with the cities, with the representative of governments, with civil society. So indeed, it is the elephant in the room here and there, and indeed, this discussion needs to be brought out to the public, need to be brought out to the media. So if I may, Gregory, and you will forgive me, one of the actors that is missing here, beyond the employers, employers, it's also the media. The media that need to be our ally in these discussions, need to be our ally in detoxicating this debate here and in our partner countries.
Thank you. Natalie.
I like what you mentioned about detoxicating, because I really love that term. I'm going to try to remember that. Well, obviously, in my little local context, I am blessed and I feel very lucky that I am part of an organization that I feel to be very open and very inclusive, and that is also my experience, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, obviously. So I don't feel like I have a lot to add to the discussion, but maybe the hopeful message that even in Flanders, even in Belgium, there are organizations where it does work. And I feel very happy to be part of that. I am also the only Belgian in my organization, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Davy.
I like complexity too, and I don't think it's fair just to say everything is related to racism or discrimination. I think I talk every day with companies, and they do not, in their back of their head, thinking I cannot attract that of those person because it's a kind of a non-EU background or a Muslim background. Is it still a problem, and has it to be better? Yes, of course. But I think as an organization, as an employer organization, we work on it every day. I think I can tell you dozens of projects we're working on with the employers every day. And it's not from today till tomorrow that we will solve the problem. But of course, there are a lot of other factors who are also playing a role in this, in the numbers we are always seeing forward. The number of the migrants, non-EU migrants, are not good. That's true. But it's not only discrimination that's the problem. There are a lot of other factors we hear also from employers that makes that there is a problem there. So we work on it every day in West Flanders, which is, I think, the most conservative province of whole of Belgium. And it's very hard. But I think with talking to companies and to employers every day, we can work towards a better labor market, a diverse labor market, an inclusive labor market. And it's a challenge, but it's not that there are no steps taken forward.
Thank you. Jamila.
Maybe I can conclude by mentioning 3 elements that can that maybe are important to make skills mobility partnerships more durable and viable. First of all, we need that top-down approach. So we need to sit at the table with employers, with state of union, vakbonden, I forgot.
Trade unions.
Okay, trade unions, okay. And with migrants to listen to their practical concerns, to find a solution. Do you wonder how to apply for a single permit? There's Jamila, you can ask her. You have questions about municipalities or other questions about an integration course, you can go to Natalie. There's Davy, there's Lenka, so we really need to talk with each other. It's very important also to involve the municipalities, because the municipality is the first counter where the migrant goes to when he declares his arrival. Very important to use a contact language. English is very important. The second thing is a bit the discussion that we just had about diversity and the importance of diversity, the importance of economic migration. We really need a strong branding strategy to put economic migration, labor migration in the spotlight. We have to mention the importance of economic migration. It's good for the economy, it's good for the diversity. And to conclude, a third element, I think we have to make these type of partnerships, so the skills mobility partnerships, we have to make them future-proof. So we're looking for talents, but we have to think on the long term, like Tessel just said, we need someone who puts a solar panel on a roof. We have to take into account the green transition, the climate change, so we really need talents for 10, 15, coming 20 years. It will be a waste of time if we match a talent and he comes here, or he cannot come here because there's no talent needed. We don't need butchers because everybody's vegan. So it's really important to take that into account. So make these partnerships future-proof, I think.
Thank you.
I'm running out of time.
Thank you. Lenka, final word.
Yeah, I want to do it something, it's totally different. I want to tell a little story. So you had a baker and he was playing with eggs. And so he made an omelette, and then he made crumbled eggs, and then he prepared the eggs in a lot of different manners, but it were still eggs. And then one day, he took some flour, some water, some sugar, and he mixed the eggs with the sugar, and the sugar said, I don't want to become liquid. And the eggs were saying, I don't want this sugar because I'm becoming fatter and fatter, and I don't like this. And then he added the water, and I said, oh, the milk. And I said, oh, no, this is disgusting. This thing coming from a cow, I don't like it. And then he added the flour. He mixed everything, and everybody was there together, and they didn't like each other. And then he said, he put them in the oven, and he said, and now do something. And he put the temperature. And at the end of the day, he had a wonderful cake. And this is for me inclusion. And this is for me what is so extremely beautiful in this world. All these different people making together a cake.
And with that, thank you. With that, we close this panel. And I am also going to steal your little story as my closing remark, because I thought the debate was more important than me summing up the day, so I hope you will remember the day, and I'm sure there will be a lot of follow-up from it. And I thank you very much for your active participation, and the panelists for their participation. And I think you have one closing remark to come to the stand, but we close it as it is. And anybody who wants to hear more about this, well, contact any of us. We're here for you. And I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doen we het zo.
Hello. Raphael, am I here? Yeah?
Discussions too with the people online and here in presence. So for the concluding remark, I have the pleasure to leave the floor to Liana Hoornweg, the Director of Sectoral and Thematic Expertise at Enabel, the Belgian Development Agency. So Liana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg, and good afternoon, everyone. I know you've been working very hard. I'll try to keep it short. I'm going to give you a brief wrap-up of the day, the 2 days, actually. So to refresh your memory, I've received this much of text, so I'll try to shorten it. But this is just an indication that, meaning that if you have this much of text, you discussed a lot of things, and they were all useful. So it's tricky to give you a recap, but I'm going to start anyway. One of the conclusions that we can draw from these 2 days is that the need for engaging with the private sector has been sufficiently highlighted by all the panelists, but the question is to what extent and how to do so. As is very often the case, I don't think it's just a matter when we talk about mobility and partnerships, it's in more public domains. How do you make or how do you create a meaningful collaboration with the private sector? The questions that you raised are, should private sector co-finance the mobility schemes? Should they be co-designed? Be involved in the selection of the sectors and the design of the training courses and other technical aspects, or should it be a mix of these things? Enabel has experience with mobility partnerships. We're testing a couple of models. I'm sure you've heard about those, the TAM project and the PALIM. So as far as we are concerned, we have the mandate to and the experience in supporting the development of the private sector in our partner countries, including through the training of talents. And the question here, however, is how to ensure, and I'm sure that you've heard this, the reach out and the engagement of the Belgian and the European companies. It's a struggle, it's difficult, and we should not underestimate this. The debates of the past 2 days have definitely showed the important role of these partnerships and the need to keep innovating and to find the right balance in meeting interests and needs of the private sector, while at the same time responding to the needs and the benefits of the public sector. I'm not telling you anything new. This is the conclusion of these 2 days. The other point is the scalability of mobility schemes. Is that even possible? It seems super urgent, at least from a political point of view and also from an analytical point of view. But if we look at the demographic analysis of our aging societies and labor market needs, do we see an urgency there? It does not seem to be perceived as an urgency by the private sector yet, even though I take the liberty of concluding that this is what you concluded these 2 days, because this is also a debate that we keep having within our programs. There is a huge urgency, but it's very difficult to get the private sector to actually realize this and to have that kind of same sense of urgency and to act. The experience of Enabel shows that before thinking of scaling up, we should ensure the anchorage of these partnerships, the soundness of the systems and the functionality of available tools, such as a talent tool, for example, talent pool, for example. Scaling is a consequence of models that are sound enough and meet the interest of the parties involved. It sounds too obvious, and it's a lot of work to make it happen. For policy buy-in at both ends, it's also crucial. This is also crucial due to the very sensitive nature of the thematic at the origin and at the destination. Taking the experience of the PALIM project, for instance, Enabel and the VDAB or the VDAB made only once a first page of a main Belgian newspaper, and it was concerning the labor mobility. It wasn't very positive. I'm sure you Googled it, and if you haven't done so, don't do it. Please don't do it. Although there are some interesting, I have to say in the article, there are some interesting hints at lessons learned for us, but it's all much more delicate and all much more subtle than the way it was portrayed. But this is also what Rafaela just mentioned. The media should also be on board. If you want to talk about meaningful mobility and meaningful partnerships, the media needs to understand it's so easy to take something that went wrong and then just let it explode. Here, a very crucial partner in the partnerships approach as well. Oh, I only have 5 minutes left. Now I'm getting stressed. Because, like I said, there is a lot of information. One thing I would say, because I will wrap that point up, is there is a brain gain through a brain train. Because we always talk about the brain drain, and that's cheap. I find that cheap. We have to really consider this brain gain for mobility, human mobility, to make sense and to want to engage. All right, the evaluation is key to the design of schemes. So as we learned in PALIM, we have to evaluate it so that we do better next time. We introduced a research action component in our mobility projects to better inform us and reflect on how to improve the design. And I can recommend this. Action research is a good tool in all instances, also in a partnership or in a mobility partnership approach. If you want to understand the different elements and different factors that play into the success or the failure of a project. And then the results, we should publish them, so share them publicly, not be ashamed also when there is failure. If we own it and we present it and we explain it, it's better than when a journalist just picks up on a small piece of the information and makes it a story that doesn't actually exist. Lastly, now I have 3 minutes, I can relax. There's only one point. The integration, the protection, and the administrative simplification. Yeah, as always, if we talk about administration, we talk about simplification, because what we tend to do when it comes to working in an administration or being in an administration is that it becomes very complex. So the integration of mobile workers is key for all parties. The protection of these workers, most of the time, they are fragile, they're fragile parties in the partnership, they should be ensured. Administrative simplification to access the labor market and to access the practical infos and to ensure social security portability should be ensured. And as the director of expertise at Enabel, I have to say that Enabel has expertise in all of these domains. And we have partnerships established in Belgium that we are very, very proud of. And we also want to keep piloting and keep promoting mobility partnerships, because we are convinced from a point of view of human development that investing in human mobility is one of the key elements in our work. I thank you very much for your attention. I hope I did justice to the 2 days that you have experienced together. And that's, I would also like to thank the organizing team, all the organizers that worked really hard to put this conference together. And I look forward to a very fruitful cooperation with all of you. Thank you very much.
Liana, for this very nice concluding remarks. So we're reaching the end of this 2-day conference.
1 minute and 5 seconds remaining.
Wait.
3 seconds.
Attention.
This is very stressing, huh?
It is.
Okay.
So thank you very much to you all for your contribution, your comments, your challenging questions. Thank you, Gregory, for bringing complexity into the conversation. Thank you to the online audience as well for being with us throughout these 2 days. We had wonderful speakers, very good moderators. So I think that we are very excited as IOM to keep on the adventures with EMN and Enabel, of course. Grégoire,
same for us. Huh?
If you want to say a word.
Just think we are expected to join the networking event. So really, all of you. Sorry for the person online, but please. Sorry. Sorry, I have a short message. The food. Excuse me.
So I got it. So
okay. Sorry, I didn't catch it all. Okay, no worries.
So of course we do not forget our interpreters. We want to thank them very warmly. And also, And also all the colleagues that have helped us in the organization of the event. Many, many thanks to all of you. And as Tina, who has an eagle eye on everything, we would like also to remind you that we have a list of participants, and please sign up to it. That's important. And once you're done, please enjoy a drink with us in the patio.
Super.